is when we start doing stuff with box and whisker plots. And this says it's a graphic organizer. In other words, it's going to tell us what all the parts are, so when we're trying to make these later, we got a place where we can get all these things. So here's how, So here's how this is going to work. This box and whisker, and you'll see why it's named that in a minute, is going to show us along the number line, but we're going to break them into 4 parts, what are called quartiles, kind of like a quarter. It's a quarter of a dollar. Quartile is a quarter of our graph. So here's how this works. We're going to get a list of numbers. Now, fortunately here, we got lucky. They're in order already. If they weren't, we'd need to do that first. But it's done for us already. Second, I need to find my median, which again, how do I find the median of something? This we have been doing. Oh, I thought you said something. What did you say? Yeah. Yeah. We're trying to, once we put them in order, we're trying to find the number in the middle. And sometimes there'll be an exact number, and we can use that. That's my median. It's also called the middle or the second quartile. Okay. So that's done for me already. If there would have been 2 numbers in the middle, we'll get to that, you add them up and divide by 2. So, and we just are going to take them in this order. So once I've found that, and I can go ahead, I could draw that in right away if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. I'll explain why that's a good idea not to in a minute. So then find the median of the lower half. You're like, wait a minute, the lower half. Anything that's to the left of my median is what's called the lower half. It's my bottom set of data. So I'm going to take those numbers and I'm going to find their median. So you're like, okay, so I take those numbers and I find the one in the middle. Well, wait a minute, Harty. There's not one in the middle. There's 2. That's okay. If there's 2 in the middle, I was just talking about this a minute ago. I get a nice example. You add them up and you divide by 2. In other words, you find their average. And that will give me the median of my lower half, otherwise known as my lower quartile or my Q1. That's what I like to call it because I don't want to come up with all these fancy words. I'll just call it Q1, okay? You'll never guess what I have to do next then. We're almost going to be to the point where we draw the line. Once we found the median for the lower half, which we just did, we're going to do the same thing for the upper half. So whatever values are after the median that we found at first, let me boost this just a little bit. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to take those values. We're going to find the value in the middle, and if there's 2 values in the middle, we just add them up, divide by 2. We're finding their mean, their average, and that will be my upper quartile, or my Q3. We're just going to break them into groups. So once I have that information, my median, my first quartile, and my third, now I'm ready to draw this thing called a box and whisker plot. So this is how this is going to work, and this is why I've got the colors for you here. So take one of your colors. We're going to draw this median in first. So we'll have a number line. Whatever my median is, I would take a color, make this a color, and I'm going to label this as my median, okay? And you also may call it your Q2. They're both the same thing. So then once I get that set, and again, on yours when we do this, you won't have the box here yet. I'll show you where the box comes in a minute. Then my Q1, I would also draw that in. So take a different color. Okay, that's going to be my lower quartile, my first quartile, my Q1. And then my last job to make the box part is to put in my upper quartile, my Q3, which would be at 320, bless you, which is my last color that I'm going to use. Once I've drawn the lines in for those 3 things, you'll notice they make the outer edges of a box and this part on the inside. So normally at this point, this is when I'd draw in the rest of my box by putting a couple of horizontal lines in there. That's my box for the box and whisker plot. You're like, okay, well, what are these little dots at the end then, these little whisker things? How do I figure those out? to figure those out, I look for the smallest value in my list. So this is called my lower extreme, or my least value. I just call it an LE. So whatever the smallest value is your lowest value, your lowest extreme. So in this case, my least value is 290. Lower extreme. You can even just put LE. That's okay. And then the value on the end, the biggest value, is called my upper extreme, which is just the biggest number that I have. And then normally we'd put those dots and then we'd draw these little whiskers on there. Hence, box and whisker plot. Now here's the one thing we don't have on here that I want to make a mark for you on, and then we'll talk about what's at the very bottom, this IQR thing. Notice my graph is cut into 4 sections. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one of those 4 sections has an equal number of data. Doesn't mean they're the same size every time. But it's going to cut them into 4 parts, and each of those parts, since they're each worth a quarter, signify 25% of my data. Now that means some of my data might be squished into a really small area. Some of my data may be really spread out. But if you have 4 25%, that adds up to 100. It covers every single one of those numbers that are up in my list. And we've been talking about range with these. And this is the same thing, except we call it the interquartile range, the IQR. And you just take your biggest value minus your littlest. Oops. Oh, that's right. Silly me. IQR is Q3 minus Q1. It's just the values that are included in my box. So where range is from the beginning to the end, it'd be like to the extremes. Okay. Our IQR, our interquartile range, is just the values in the box from greatest to least, just those 2. So keep this handy, because again, for a while, you're probably going to have to look back at it quite a bit to remember how to do the steps. But all the steps are here for what we need to do.
Don't change it.
Don't change it. Okay. Well, I was going to say, I got spots further up if you need to be able to see a little bit better. Because what we're going to do then is on the note sheet, we're actually going to build some of these from beginning to end so you get a little more used to this. And like I said, we're going to be spending a couple of days doing this anyway. So, here's how this is going to work. This notepad, and again, the notes you can use on quizzes and tests and stuff. So, I mean, shoot, why not? Why not? So our box and whisker plot is a data display. It's a visual picture that organizes my data into 4 groups, the quartiles that we just got done talking about. So 2 parts of this box and 2 whiskers. So it points at all the different sections and things here that we're working with. So for instance, we're looking to see all these different values in all these different spots, and I've got these quartiles in there. But remember, there's 25% in each of these. And that one line that's in the middle of my box is my median. So when we're trying to find these things, and again, here's another sheet that's going to give you all the steps that you need to be able to make your box and whisker. Like it says here, the lengths of the sections tell us how spread out the data is. So my lower quartile is going to be the median of the lower half. And again, we're calling that Q1. So if I were labeling these, this 370 would be my Q1. Okay, it's always going to be the first part of my box. The upper quartile is the median of the upper half. This 459 would be my upper quartile, or my Q3. And you can call it either. They're interchangeable with each other. My lower extreme is my least valued data. So this would be my lower extreme, the 264. And my greatest data value would be my upper extreme, which in this case would be the 572, because that's the biggest number I see anywhere on the graph. So it's just going to take some time to get used to the names of things. But the process really isn't that bad once you get used to it. Okay? So let's actually play with some of these from start to beginning to end. It shouldn't be the end to the beginning. That would kind of be weird. So when we flip over here, I'm actually going to start down here towards the bottom because I want us to actually get to play with this. No, let's play with theirs. You know, make it a little easier to start on this first one. Okay, they were nice to us on the first one. They gave us the data, they put it in order for us. That won't happen every time. So they put them in order. And I go, okay, my first job is always to find the median. Once the numbers are in order, find the median, find the number in the middle. So I start counting from the edges. And then, oops, here, I start counting from the edges, silly man. And I find out there's not one single middle number. Well, we've done this before. Add them up and divide by 2. It's a decimal, but that's okay. But here's what I want you to watch out for. Okay, here's my median. Notice it's a brand new number. It's not one of the other numbers, so it goes in the middle. When I'm trying to find my quartiles now, it's like I've split my list in half. The 4 numbers less than my median are in my lower part, and the 4 numbers after my split with the median are in the upper part. So your list is actually increasing by a number. So when I try to find the lower quartile, I start from the edges, and I start counting in, so it's these 2 values I'm working with. And I know you probably know the answer to this already, but it's good to get used to doing it here. If there's 2 middle values, we just add them up and divide by 2. 6 plus 6 is 12, divided by 2 is 6. So that's my lower quartile. And I can do the exact same thing with the other side. I start from the edges, and I count either until my fingers come together. I say, oops, it's these 2 numbers. These 2 right here. Add them up and divide by 2. And if you're doing it on the calculator, reminder, let me move this over here. Reminder, you have to use the parentheses, because watch this. My real answer, oops, I got to get the division sign in there. Okay, my answer is 15. That's what my upper quartile is. If I forget the parentheses, watch what happens. Uh-oh. That's not good. And I'd hope you'd know, well, wait a minute, the average of 13 and 17 is 21. That's bigger. The calculator does this division first if I don't put the parentheses in. So I've got to remember that, or I can get myself in all sorts of issues here. So now I got all my information here. What's my low extreme going to be for this set of data? 5, okay. And upper is 19. So here's how this works. I see my lowers at 5, my uppers at 19. I think that's close enough. I'd probably count by ones. So if I start at 5, so 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay. Work my way back here. You want to make your numbers a little bit away from the line, because otherwise my box are going to go right through them. And sometimes you may count by 5s, you may count by 2s. You can do what you want to. But your numbers have to have the same value for each mark. You can't just mix it up and just make it whatever number and skip around. So when I get here, here's our first opportunity to do this. I'm always going to plot my median first. So once I get my line set up, and all my little dash marks, I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to say, okay, there's my median, 9.5. I'm going to come up here above the line, and I'm just going to make a vertical line, sort of like a 1. I'm going to draw that in. Then I'm going to start working my way down. My lower quartile's at 6. So I'm going to go over to 6. I'm going to make a vertical line. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my upper quartile. I'm going to go to 15. I'm going to make a vertical line. You're like, why are you making all these vertical lines? Because once I make those 3, my median and my 2 quartiles, I'm going to turn them into a box. Hence the box part of my box and whisker. And exactly. And then I go to my extremes and I put dots at 5 and at 19, and I connect those to my box, making my whiskers. And that's it. Now normally I'd go ahead and label things because you never know when you might get asked a question based on your box and whisker plot. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to label my lower extreme. My lower quartile, remember, is my Q1. Then I have my median, which also can be called my Q2 sometimes, so I got to be ready for that just in case. My upper quartile is my Q3, and then my value way on the end is my upper extreme. But here's what I want you to remember out of this. Remember, this is my data being cut into 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. And even though they're different sizes, those 4 pieces each are going to have 25% of the data in them. So like if you got asked a question like how much data is there between quartile 1 and the median? Well, 25, it's just this piece. Lower extreme in the median, oh, 25 and 25, it's 50. They're always going to be in quantities of 25%. And that way I can find those values, I can find those answers. Now I want to do one more from start to finish here, and then I'll work on some of the homework ones with you, because I don't want to leave you hanging on that. All right, so one more start to finish, and we don't have them put in order for us this time. Bummer. So let's see here. Help me get these into order. What's going to come first with my list here? One, okay. So 1, then I'm with you on 6. I'm going to check them off so I don't use 1 twice. 9, all right. 12. All right. Keep it rolling. All right. And 18 to finish. Once I've got those, number 1 job, median. Let's see what we got here. Start from the ends. What's that? Yes, we do. 2 numbers. So add them up. Divide by 2. What is my median? It will be a decimal. 12.5. Okay, so we got that part done. Next, I got to find my quartiles. So I got to find my Q1 and my Q3. So I'm going to rewrite my list. But remember, after the 12, we're going to stick our median in the middle. It's a new number. And this only happens if I have two numbers in the middle. Because by doing this, now I've got half my values for my Q1, half of them to find my Q3. And similarly to what we just ran into with that, if I start at the edges, oops, I got two numbers in the middle here again. So just like we did for median, if there are two numbers in the middle, I'm going to add them up, and I'm going to divide by 2. It's 7.5. And I'm going to do the same thing for my Q3, my upper quartile. All right. Get those two in the middle. Add them up and divide by 2. And that's 15.5. Okay. So I've got my median and my quartiles. I got what I need to make my box. So I'm looking, now the one last thing, I do want to know my lower extreme and my upper extreme because that's going to help me when I'm,
1 and 18.
okay, least and greatest. 1 and 18. So I look and I'm like, yeah, I can get 18 lines in here. Let's say we didn't want to get 18 lines in here. Let's say we decided we wanted to spread this out more. So let's say we did something like we went by 2s. You're like, Harty, why are you doing this? Because I want you to see an example of we can even do this and not necessarily count by 1s and still make it look good.
Well, what if we do count by 1?
That's okay. You can go right ahead and keep going with the 1s. So I look and I go, okay, my median is 12.5. So just a little past the 12. Not in the middle, because that'd be 13. Okay, so my median's right about here. Again, I'm going to put it up a little bit so I can draw my box here in a minute. My Q1's at 7.5, so a little less than 8. Make my line. And then my Q3's at 15.5, so almost to 16. And again, if you went by 1s, you'd just go like in the middle of 15 and 16 for that. Once you've got your 3 lines, we'll draw that in. And the only thing left is to put my extremes. So 1 will be way back here. 18's out here. Connect the dots to get my whiskers. And I'm ready to go. Now again, if you don't want to label everything every time, that's okay. But I still would label my extremes. I'd label my median. And I'd label my quartiles. If you don't want to do the 25% thing, you don't have to. But again, that's going to come in handy a lot for you. So that's what we're looking at as far as building these go. And then we can answer questions from them. You know, where's this percent? Where's that percent? And kind of play it a little bit that way. So keep this handy with your organizer, because now I'm going to help out on this so we don't have a bajillion things to do later. And I'm actually going to do some of the ones on the back page with you here too. So here's what we're going to do. I'll tell you what we'll do. Okay. I am going to help you out with number 2. We are going to skip number 3. So let's do number 2 for right now, because I want you guys to get some practice here. We are on the homework packet. That's true. So on 2, now here they put 2 box and whisker plots together. They put weights of electric handheld power blowers and gasoline handheld. Compare the median, range, and IQ for the 2 types. Sure. So we got electric and we got gas here. Now we can actually start using these to figure out something. So compare the medians. Okay, what's the median of my electric blower?
6.75.
Nice, okay. My median is 6.75. What about for the gas one? 10.5. Okay, just being able to read one of these is an important thing. So let's see. The range, and we're talking about, when it talks about range and inner quartile, they're different. Range is just least to greatest. So what's my least and what's my greatest value on the electric?
5.
Okay, so here, if I'm looking at range, and we're going to take bigger minus smaller, and we're going to subtract them. So on the electric, my range, my least to greatest, would be a difference of 4. It's 4 to get from 5 to 9. What about with the gas? Least to greatest. So once I get that range on the electric, what about the gas? What's its greatest to least?
7.5.
Okay, so I'm going to do bigger minus smaller. And I'm going to get my answer for that. Now the difference, and we talked about this a little bit when we were doing the notes, regular range is least to greatest. If it's inner quartile range, okay, it's going to be your Q3 minus your Q1. So it's the outer edges of your box. So if I'm looking at the outer edges of my box for electric, what are those two values going to be that I'm subtracting?
6 and 7.5.
Yeah, 6 and 7.5, because that's my Q1 and my Q3. What about for the gas? 9 and 11.75. So there's lots of information I can get from these graphs. Like, there's a much bigger difference in the gasoline weights than there is in the electric necessarily. Okay, they're more spread out. There's lots of things I can find from this that can help me get the values. So, let's see if there's, I think there's a couple more questions about this one on the back of this sheet. I'm going to peek. Okay, I'll read the questions on the back so you can keep looking at the front here. It says, about what percent of electric blowers are less than 7.5 pounds? Now you're like, how am I supposed to know that? Remember, each of these pieces is 25% of all the data. So if I'm looking for all of the data at 7.5 or less, how many sections do I have? What percentage, if I take up all of these, what percent of the data do I have? 75, because I have 25, and another 25, and another 25. That's why I say putting the 25s on there is kind of important, because it lets me visually see how many of them add that up. And I'll flip back in a minute, because we've got the next question says, about what percent of gasoline blowers are more than 10.5 pounds? Okay, let's see. Gasoline. There's 10.5 right here. So how many sections do I have in that area? There's one. And there's 1, because my other 2 are here and here. So I'm like, oh, 25 and 25. Okay, so about 50. And then the last question they have there is, which type of blower is the lighter blower? Well, we're going to have to take a peek. One more flip over. Which type of blower weighs the least? If all those numbers are there in weight, I'm assuming in pounds. Yeah, the electric ones. It looks like they're just about all lighter than that. And I can get that straight from my graph. So some of these, it's not even going to be about the other information. It's just going to be that part. As you can see here, we're going to skip number 3. I'm going to leave outliers for a different time. It's kind of funny because then I can say outlier and make it get out. It's kind of funny. But the back one, because I want to work some of these. Now some of these I will try to read as best I can, because a couple of them for some reason did not come out on this as well as I wanted them to. So it says up here, Colby graphs some data as shown in this box and whisker plot. Which statement is true about the data? So I start to look. Well, the range of data is 25. Well, I don't think that's true, because I'm looking here. This is about at 25. And I'm looking, and I'm like 65. What else we got here? 85. And that's at 95. Well, 95 minus 25, I don't think that's going to be 25. No. 1/2 of the data are below 65. Here's 65. It only looks like it's this whisker. That's only 25%, so that's not half. Boo. The median of the data is 60. Is 60 in the box? No. 3/4 of the data are below 90. Yes, because here's 90. There's a second part in here. My line didn't show up real well. 3 parts. Okay, so I'm going to see on those how that works. And just in case some of you can't see it on yours, for number 7, my median line should be right here in the box there, inside my box. So your biggest job with this is to try and answer the last couple of questions on this page and to do the single box and whisker plot that's necessary back on the front. I just want to get you some practice because we're going to do this again tomorrow. We're going to do the exact same type of stuff just to get you some more practice, and you're going to get to do more of these in building because that's the biggest help that you can be on these. So just knock that one out.